Hi, everybody. I'm Sean Fitzpatrick, Chief Marketing Officer of Overt, and this is Chris Boggs.
I'm the Chief Organic Strategist with Overt.
And welcome to the webinar. We're going to get started. Trusted, found, and chosen financial services content in the age of AI. So we've been running a festival of webinars about AI SEO, this topic. We've done it for healthcare, doing it for home services general. Today is focused on the needs of banks, credit unions, insurance companies, finance services. And we just want to, there are general rules here, but we're going to go under the hood. And Chris has organized case studies that are relevant to your industry and over its clients in your industry. And so it's going to be fun to get into it. So shall we hop right in, Chris?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So first, we just want to talk about the landscape out there, how things are changing. We all know they're changing, but we just wanted to quantify this. So the first piece is people are using these tools. So this slide just shows hundreds of millions of weekly active users. And I must be, representing, 100 million of those searches that are happening, right? It's just everybody's using it all the time. And this is affecting their behavior and how they search content, but also where you need to be. Anything to add about this one, about this usage piece? It's just out there everywhere.
No, I mean, this is all self-reported data and it continues to grow. So by the time this airs, you can add another 10, 15% maybe.
Yeah,
even.
That's right. So the train has left the station. We all know that. But so what does that cause? The first piece is the change of traffic. Could you speak about the changing to website traffic that this has created, Chris?
Sure. Well, last year, as many people know, it was a very bad year for organic search and search reporting. Starting in the first part of the year, people saw a tremendous loss in traffic between 25 to 65%, depending on the industry. The publishers, especially people with deep, heavy informational sites, where now people were consuming content without clicking. If there's an AI overview, it reduces clicks by 58%. And zero-click searches are at 65% now. And if AI overviews are there in Google, you're going to get 80% of people are not even going to click. They're going to get the information they came to find in Google right there. Now, that said, that's been existing for about a year now. So if you're doing SEO and you've been doing SEO since last April of 2025 in May, you should be starting to see a reversal of data. You should start to see almost, if you're doing SEO well, you should see a year-over-year climb compared to 25 starting in May. So we as SEOs and organic search specialists have lost sort of that crutch of, oh, it's all zero-click searches. Oh, it's people that are finding the information in AI and not needing to come to the site. So that's the change. If you look at this example here, what are the priorities for long-term financial goal planning at 37 years old? That's a classic example of the types of searches people are doing in financial services. Even the Google result still has a decent number of blue links, but not a lot of people get past that AI overview without extending it. And they're getting a lot of information from there.
Mm-hmm. And just one piece to add on this, and we're going to speak a little bit more about it, but there's less site traffic, but the traffic that's coming through to websites is more qualified often because they're there to do business. Yeah,
that's true. What we're seeing, there's a couple trends like that. One is that the quality of traffic, even though it's typically between 1% and 3%, but you can see it almost as high as 10 for some, is great. When you look at the behavior metrics compared to other channels, it's definitely aligned with direct, email, organic, typically the titans when it comes to behavior metrics. But really what you're seeing now is not only that, the quality of the traffic is good, but we started to see in Q4 of 2025 that the more that your brand is seen in an LLM, the more likely your brand search is going to start going up because people are coming back to Google still because they trust finding a brand in Google. So if you're getting more exposure in LLMs, there is a direct, what seems to be causality that you're having an increase in brand search happening as well, starting in Q4 of 2025.
Okay, good. Love these silver linings. That's great stuff. So the next SEO trend, search is now conversational and contextual. So this again just puts the numbers 8.5 billion voice assistance devices in use, people using them regularly. And when they do, they go on and on. So the average query for these voice searches, because people are chatting with a chatbot, a chat agent, they're talking to it. So they'll ask a full question, average of 29 words. And you've heard me working when we've been traveling together. My queries are often 150 words. I'll just ask in a whole paragraph to make sure I get it right. So that conversational searching creates a responsibility for marketers to create content that meets that verbal style. Yeah. And this goes even deeper for Gen Z and Gen A, right?
Yeah. Conversational and voice search. I mean, voice search is well aligned with conversational. So
absolutely. So then the last trend is about trust. And this is, you put in here, what is the dead internet theory for people who don't know?
So in the last 10 years or so, there's been this theory floating around. But if you look at some of the evidence, it's pretty crazy that there's a lot of bot traffic and communication going on online.
Yeah.
And on the right here, we got a little cartoon, in an alternate reality, there's the alive internet theory where this robot is just really upset because it's all humans all over the internet now, right? So authenticity matters. And that's the key here. We're seeing a lot more where people are starting to question, is this real? Is this AI? Is it real? So that's going to follow as people become more sophisticated in sort of sniffing out AI. They're going to start to understand how well written the content is and how just purely AI written it is. And that includes the other type of content that we're going to get into later in this deck, right? So AI generated content and imagery is definitely getting easier to sniff out. And that's something you got to think about. In a lot of places, and of course in financial services, in a sense, you have a bit of a shield in financial services because of legal and compliance. So that's going to, I think, just naturally add a layer of protection to some of this potential overuse of bots.
Okay. But even so, people are looking for authenticity in this confusing, fast-moving world where AI is taking over so much. Yeah. All right. So thanks, Chris. The next piece is basically, before we get into the actionable tips, which we're going to get into in a minute, we just wanted to define, what are we talking about when we talk about AI SEO? What is it and how is the work different from traditional SEO? So we made this slide. It's all of the different names that people have been talking about: GEO, answer engine optimization, SGE. I like AI SEO because it's so explanatory, but what's your favorite term of art for this? Where are you seeing the dust settle? And also let's talk about just how is it different from traditional?
Cool. Well, and on this word jumble slide, I think GEO stands out the most to me. AI SEO is also good. GEO, I've just been using it longest. I get generative engine to try to differentiate, but as we'll learn, SEO really is GEO. So no matter what you call it, did you know that SEO was actually rebranded as content marketing way back in 2010 because everyone hated SEOs, right? So SEO has a lot of sort of bad connotations to it. So some people like to use GEO and so forth, but as we'll learn, it's a lot of the same workflows.
Okay, that's right. So what is the difference? So basically these LLMs, it's this whole revolutionary technology where they're synthesizing content from everywhere, and it's a mathematical prediction of what the next word would be in the average string when anyone is talking about this subject matter. Very complicated stuff. We're not going to get into it here, but how do they overlap as far as their functionality and how the search occurs?
Well, it's great the way you asked that, Sean, because what LLMs do, and you might have seen it, and a lot of people have seen it probably in the questions that they ask to ChatGPT, but they have a thing called query fan out or question fan out. And that means when they see a question, their machine mind is like a chess player, and it thinks of the next 7 questions you're going to ask, right? So query fan out is very important because it really demonstrates also how an LLM works compared to a search engine. It's thinking in strings and of questions and answers, and it's looking at a much broader scale, although Google, again, gets around, right? And it has a lot of citation and it can tell whether something is legitimate or not, right? But the way that the LLMs work is they find the legitimate thing, but now they go back to Google anyway because they got some egg on their face, right? And especially in financial services and healthcare and in some of the areas where they were making up metrics, right? And they were steering people incorrectly with the IRS. There was a lot of bad juju in terms of what was going on. And so they've really doubled down on going back to check with Google. And so that's why SEO is so important, because if you're not in Google, you're not going to be there when they check. And if they found you somewhere else, you still want to also still be in Google. If you see this example here, what kind of bank account is best for a college student freshman? This is a ChatGPT, the bottom of the answer. You can see Best Money, which is kind of an informational aggregate, lead aggregator site, is already advertising in there. And ChatGPT just launched advertising within a week or two of when we're recording this. So it's out there. And now I've always said, there's nothing better than having 2 storefronts on Rodeo Drive, right? So everything that you're doing organically to try to get visibility in LLMs now should also be doubled down with any opportunities, if you have budget, to be able to appear at the bottom of the right queries.
So they're different paradigms, but the LLMs are referencing Google. They go ask Google too. So you got to be in the 2 places at once. But also, and this next slide speaks about it, says just the techniques for approaching those 2 different paradigms are similar. Yeah.
And we used to have a slide for this. I think when we presented this at the conference, we had checkbox, right? Where it showed yes and yes for SEO and GEO. And it was the 5 things kind of that we're going to be going through. But Google has been proactively PRing this, right? In the last month or 2, especially, where they're like, SEO is GEO. And the reason they're doing that is because they've been around and they've seen SEO get this bad name that I was just mentioning, right? And people coming up with all these funky ways to take shortcuts to #1 rankings. So they want to be very clear that what they've been advocating for SEOs to do, which aligns with technical infrastructure, optimizing your content to make it relevant and useful for users, as Sean's going to describe, and authority, right? Getting links. That equals GEO, and they're banging the drum heavily about that right now. So people that have been doing SEO, many financial services companies are blessed to have good budgets, and they probably hired good internal SEOs for some time. So hopefully you're already pretty aligned with what you need to do for GEO. And you can ask your team and they'll probably say, oh yeah, we're exactly aligned, I would guess. So hopefully.
And so I believe this, and this is true. And we're going to dig into, there are specific areas where you might double down or increase your attention, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit. So what we've got here are the top 5 things you can do to optimize for AI search this summer. So this is the actionable part of the webinar. This is the list of things that you can do to help your brand rise within LLMs and traditional search. And we've got the list right there. Number 1, focus on your authority topics. 2, write clear and helpful content. Number 3, get conversational. 4 is rockin' the schema, probably the most technical thing we'll talk about here, but we'll make it fun. And finally, be present where AI seeks answers. So we'll dig into these each in a quick chapter right now. And the first is focusing on your authority topics. And this first slide, as a marketer, the funnel, all the marketers out there know this funnel: top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, these areas where we've all been trained to focus for years. Basically, when Chris was speaking earlier about zero-click search, where top of funnel searches are often just ending right there where people get the synthesized answer. So the recommendation that we've been providing for our clients is to focus on the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, and really asking the question, be honest, where do you deserve to show up when someone does a search? Where does it serve the user best when your brand is there? Can you speak a little more about that?
Sure. And one of the things that, depending on the audience out there, there's some pretty large financial services companies that can target what you would consider a top of funnel term like car insurance or life insurance, right? That's the toppest of funnel is insurance.
The toppest.
But the most toppest. But life insurance, health insurance, that's pretty top of funnel, right? So then you got to think a little bit below that. The other thing that I'll mention is that you want to think below the funnel too. And especially in financial services, as people are trying to find ways to log into their account or their credit card or any number of other services, savings accounts, retirement accounts that they may be trying to get access to, a lot of times, especially with the larger companies, it's pretty complex trying to find the right link, right? So there's a lot to think about in terms of organizing your content so that it can appear at the right part of the funnel, and focusing, as we're going to talk about even further, on your authority topics, which is that middle of the funnel, right? And what is it that differentiates your financial services company in your particular business line or business lines that you can demonstrate and really focus on and create a lot of great content around? That's what's going to be the differentiator, because there's thousands of other pages for Google and for LLMs to look at when it comes to some of this top of funnel. Like, what's the definition of interest, or what's a student checking account typically look like, right? There's so much content, it's flooded out there, right?
Yeah.
So you have to differentiate and focus on your authority, and we'll talk about some better ways to make that content too.
And just say for the folks out there who are from, say, a regional bank, a regional credit union, an insurance company that's limited to a particular region or one state, they've actually got a leg up in this area because they can utilize their location to create that specificity, right?
Yes, and we'll talk about that in terms of the importance of Google business profiles, especially if you've got a multi-location entity.
Yeah, okay, great. So the next piece, as far as showing the authority, is the combined citations. So this is a pretty familiar view for folks who've done Google searches themselves. What are we looking at here, Chris?
Well, this is an example where Equity Trust Company, which is a self-directed our custodian, among other products, they've developed a lot of authority around specific products in the financial services space. So what are key considerations for self-directed IRA in real estate, for example? In Google's AI mode, there's going to be multiple sources of information from different actual houses, in a sense, because YouTube is in there, right? So Equity Trust has also invested heavily in YouTube. They've got content that's out here in the open on their blog, as well as within their main site structure. That's very helpful. So these will be combined into single answers often. And we see this across industries, but it's really a good sign if you're creating pieces of content across different channels and mediums, i.e. text and video, because then the LLMs are smart enough and Google's AI mode is smart enough to go out and see those two,
there's a pattern
pull them together.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That is fascinating. And that's, of course, an overt client, Equity Trust. So thank you for featuring that, Chris. The next trend, right? Clear, helpful, trustworthy content. So these are good old-fashioned Google best practices. And we included this slide here for the EEAT acronym from Google, focusing on when you create content, you want to show your experience, your unique expertise, your authoritativeness, and your trustworthiness. So this talks about going beyond just saying things, but having trust marks that show that you're already a trusted entity within your region, or if you've gotten any awards, right? Authoritativeness is using the credentials of the professionals within your organization, things like that, that just position your content as the right content for a reader to consume and for the LLM to reference. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then moving beyond that, there's the next slide about clear, helpful, trustworthy content. So I call this the Emily Post rule. So just being a host with etiquette and really empathizing with your users. How can you best serve the person who's come to the page? And if you're serving that person, you're serving the machines, the LLMs that are scanning the page, by being sure that everything is crisp and clear and well organized and concise, and then everybody happy. Yeah. So tell more about the screen grab that you've put here.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk about the screen grab in 1 second. But the other part about this, you just mentioned EEAT, expertise, experience, for being the first two.
Yeah.
And this is really where you can pound home and drive home the expertise and the experience.
Yeah.
Don't just have a page about a particular business line, but demonstrate how your bank does it differently, or demonstrate how your insurance company treats their clientele and their customers differently. Use data, use tables, use examples, us versus them. These are the kinds of content that people want to consume, that's easy to consume and see. And then because they're going out and they're trying to find ways to compare different products, if it's in the financial services industry, any one of them, right? So you want to make sure that you're giving them skimmable stuff that's bite-sized and that it shows your experience and your expertise. On the right side, just a quick screenshot there, that's from southcarolina.edu, University of South Carolina, and they're just talking about digital accessibility. It's 2 words to really keep in mind. The good thing is that most legal and compliance for financial services companies are also a little bit digital accessibility sticklers, because digital accessibility is a great opportunity for SEO, making sure that you have additional layers within your site structure to clearly define the important things.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So clear, helpful, trustworthy content. Moving on to the next trend or the next piece of advice, get conversational. So we spoke earlier about everybody using these conversational tools to do their searches. And so this is talking about how you can meet those queries with your content. You've got some examples to bring that to life. Could you dig in?
Sure. Well, I really loved this one when I found it, because I did a search using AI mode in Google. What are the ways to save on car insurance for 21-year-old male? It's kind of personal to me. So the great thing about this page is we talked about EEAT. This covers the authoritativeness and trustworthiness really well. And these are the areas that are circled in green here, which again, advanced SEOs have picked up on this, especially in regulated industries, and have started to show content being reviewed regularly and edited regularly and updated regularly. Those are all ways to show and to gain trust, not only from the users that are reading it, but also the machines. Oh, wow, this has been updated this recently. Then it's natural language that you want, right? So besides all the authoritativeness and trustworthiness, the main part of this slide is that you should think about FAQs, and they can be at the top of the page, but nowadays they need to be at the category level too. Every business line should have its own FAQs. You shouldn't have, and then for those FAQs, you might still have some overlapping, like where can I find a list of ATMs or ITMs, right? Things like that, where it's going to be useful to have an overlapping FAQ. But if it's a page about car insurance, or if it's a page about car insurance for students, that should have FAQs very specific to car insurance for students. This page also does a great job because it's got tables on it that show cheap car insurance for 21-year-olds. And that combination of information that's regularly updated and that's been reviewed by someone with a designation, as Sean mentioned, it's working, right?
And the very simplest thing at all is, how much is car insurance for 20-year-olds is just something somebody would search in this.
And by the way, this is from The Zebra, in case you can't see the citation.
Zebra. So next trend, thanks on that one. I think we're doing okay for time. Rock the schema, the most technical piece. So I'm going to try this out. So schema, tell me, how do I do with this? Schema is basically behind the page code that puts little flags on your content that clarifies what is the content about and where does it sit within the structure of your website. How did I do?
I see you as a person who likes little flags. No, it's a great point. And that's a good way to summarize it, but it is just additional information for machines. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
It's very geeky, and we'll get into it very briefly, the geekiness of it, but it's providing an extra depth of layer. For example, a machine can't read a table of content that well, so you can create a schema that supports the information that's in that table and make it much more machine legible. And this is very big in financial services. We have all kinds of maximum limit and all kinds of different stuff, tables that are going on, right? The other thing too that it can do is reinforce FAQs, not only the ones that are FAQs that are on the page, but within the content. Contextually, you may be asking and answering questions. So in the background, you can tell the machine, hey, this paragraph asks or answers this question.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So this example on the screen here, we're on the Rock the Schema here with the Yoast SEO.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff that's out there that you can get as a plugin for WordPress, and Yoast is probably the leader, or one of them definitely, that gives you good basic schemas. And so you should be leveraging it, and you should leverage it to as far as it can go for you. But there's a lot of opportunity to go beyond that. And what I'm recommending is that you think about the next level of schema, because it should be page specific and it should be really reinforcing your content. And we're going to talk about some of the types that do that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, on the next slide shows some schema. So what are we looking
Yeah,
at?
so this
here?
is an example of a screenshot of the code from Navy Federal, which I'm a client, thanks to my Marine Corps days. But the thing about them is that somebody did some schemas over there. It's possible that this is coming through a plugin, or somebody checked the box saying, hey, we did schemas. But every schema on there, on their mortgage page, is that it's an image object. It's defining something as an image, which a machine can tell is an image, right? So the point is, it can look strong, and maybe somebody said, oh, you did schemas, all right, check, on to the next thing. But this is not good schema, right, that Navy Fed has in place, and there's a great opportunity for them, for example.
But if there's anybody from that team watching, it's good that you got started on the process.
Yes. Hoorah.
Yeah, they might be out there, Chris. But going on to the next page, it talks about these more common schema types that you've talked about that are really kind of the basics. Like, this is a website, this is an organization, this is a web page, right? These are still important to do, but you can go deeper now, right?
Yep, these are the basics, and they're good and they're important. But as the search engines and the LLMs advance, there starts to be things that they can really quickly see. So you want to leverage the additional information that you could give them versus what I would call the basics.
Okay. And we've got some examples of.
These are great ones for financial services, a subset of list. And some of the ones at the bottom, like how to, data set, video object, collection page, these are actually applicable across industries, FAQ page too. But the top four are just four of the examples of there's 25, 30, 40. And depending on your specific business line, there could be even more. But you can actually further define yourself to a machine as what kind of financial service entity you are, what kind of products you have, like the very specific differences between types of CDs or savings accounts, whether it's a loan or credit, the difference between a mortgage and a HELOC. It's much better to be able to identify this clearly to a machine. Even like there's agency level things, and like if you're a company that has multiple offices as an insurance agency, there's a schema for that too.
Mm-hmm. So Chris, whenever we get to this page, it seems deep, and I want to clarify for folks: is this possible to do through a WordPress plugin, or how can one approach this complexity with schema?
There probably are WordPress plugins. I haven't found them because I typically like to create the schema. Mm-hmm. But I would suspect that there could be some advanced schema WordPress plugins that are out there that you should look at. Mm-hmm. But really, you should, again, make sure that it's a page to page, and that you're really creating schemas for the individual page versus having something that just goes and creates it across the board and really puts a lot of the same types on every page.
Yeah. So it's not just a gesture. You got to go in deep in this day and age. Okay.
Customize.
Great. Okay. Last piece, be present where AI seeks answers. So this is my favorite part because it's about all the exciting marketing work there is to do out there. So basically what this is saying is that for me, with AI SEO, it goes far beyond the website into these many owned channels where you can distribute your content, as well as third-party channels that might cover you. Yeah. And so the first piece of this is, if you do content, slice it and dice it, atomize it, and put it everywhere. If you do a blog post, make a video of the blog post, put that video on YouTube and the Instas, and you get more out of the subject matter. And it also goes into just making sure that you put your content in other places. Can you talk more about it, Chris?
Sure. But we're going to also talk about, the importance of the, having authority beyond your own channels, right? Mm-hmm. It ties into this. you need to have your brand mentioned on social platforms, on YouTube. If you're in financial services, there's a number of third-party sites out there that you can get your brand mentioned on. Investopedia, NerdWallet, Bankrate, Forbes Advisor, Motley Fool, Kiplinger, CNBC Select, Morningstar. Those are just some of the top of the cream of the crop that might be harder to get into, but there's a number of opportunities. All those entities are crawled by LLMs regularly because they understand that it is a centralized source of trustable information about financial services. To get on there, you have to go through editing, right? And then it goes through legal and compliance on top of that, right? So the point is that this is a great group of sites. It's good to be on Reddit. It's good to be on LinkedIn, wherever you can. It's a little bit more trepidatious what you can say on those platforms in terms of being your brand, right? Again, because of legal and compliance. So some of these other platforms that are tailor-made for a regulated industry is where you need to bang the drum. And it becomes classic PR, Sean.
Yeah. So we've talked about this, that beyond, it's great to put your content right out there, but also PR is back, baby, right? It's, again, very worth it to get a story place that's covering your institution in the newspaper, in the business journal, wherever you can, because that's validating. And for a while, people were saying, well, nobody reads the media anymore. People aren't consuming that. But now it's not just for the readers, it's also for the LLMs to consume the article and see that you have authority. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, so there it is. Be present where AI seeks answers. And so then the next piece that we'll talk about is this multi-location practices aligning. And I know you're passionate about location alignment on GBPs and elsewhere. Talk more about that.
Yes, well, I've always had this concept that I would love to be pulled over by a police officer and told that, sir, you were driving so well, I'm going to give you this Citizens Award, right? It's never going to happen, right? But I got to tell you, Chase Frank gets my Citizen Award here for the GBP because I did a number of banks and financial services institutions and checked sort of how they align and how well they do this. This is very complex, especially for an entity as large as Chase, to make sure that you have alignment not only with your branding, right? So if you see in the upper right there, each of their locations is called either Chase Bank, or Chase ATM. You can be in any country in the States and you're going to see, or any country in the States, any county in the States, and you're going to see that, right? If you do a county level search, they're very clean. And on top of that, if you look at the one in Clifton Park, New York, that link that just says chase.com, it actually goes to the page that maps to 20 Park Avenue, Clifton Park, New York. And I see this so often where financial services companies have one address here, one address there, one address over here. And
like the website doesn't match the GDP.
Yext helps with that, as it were, right? People probably kind of understand what I'm talking about because you want to align, especially if you have a lot of locations, and make sure that your name, address, and phone numbers align. This is probably the single most, I think, the leakiest part of the sieve when it comes to brand authority is especially the larger your brand gets, not aligning this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Chase has done a great job with it. So I'm going to be the cop that pulls over Chase and says, good job, good driving.
Good job. And it's really just a matter of housekeeping. It's making sure that the facts are lined up across your footprint, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, we've made it through all these tips. We're going to get to the questions in a moment. I do want to just share, as far as the next step goes, we're talking about tools that you can get. We're saying that you should get going by reprioritizing your content. And but we just want to put this QR code up next, so make sure that people can get that. Go ahead and do a screen grab on it right now. You can download the cheat sheet of these actionable items for you to optimize your brand for LLM discovery and traditional search discovery. And you can even request to have a complimentary Flash AI SEO audit by Chris and his team of your brand and your footprint. We're happy to do it, and we'd love to meet you and talk to you about your challenges. Now, from here, we're going to go into the question and answer session. And believe it or not, we only booked this space out for a little while. So we're going to get kicked out of here. We're going to answer your questions from over in the podcast studio in a minute. So put your requests down there just outside the window. I think it's somewhere to my left. And we'll be going through them and answering those questions. Okay, everybody, I moved to the other room. They kicked us out of that space, and I'm on my own. Chris had to go to another thing, and so hopefully I'll represent well. We do have some questions coming in. Thanks, Dave, for sharing the questions. And if we don't get to yours, or if you have more questions, just email us. You've been getting emails for signing up for this, so you can reply to those, or go to our website contact form, or you can find my email somewhere. So here are the questions. We got a few. The first is, financial services organizations operate in highly regulated environments. How do we balance AI optimization with compliance requirements? And this is a piece that Chris has talked about, where actually compliance, leaning in on your compliance regulations, actually positions your organization for discovery and SEO success, because the same things that support compliance support that sort of authority and I guess trustworthiness in your content, right? So things like clear disclosures, having a subject matter expert speaking with their credentials there, having documented sources, doing regular content audits on your website to just make sure that it's fresh and accurate. All of those things support compliance and keep your I's dotted and your T's crossed, but they also support your SEO and your AI SEO. So I would say they're not at cross purposes, and it's even a nice message that I would share with your compliance team, to say that the work that we're doing dovetails with the work that you need us to do. So happy endings there. I hope that answered the question. Okay. Next one. What is the biggest missed opportunity you see among banks, credit unions, and insurance carriers and wealth management firms right now? And this is an interesting one, because it's like a lot of organizations are putting great energy into doing the SEO work, but it's really about that conversational approach. In other words, a lot of companies are speaking about products. They're saying the products that they provide and the specifications of those products, but the searches are conversational about life moments, right? So the biggest opportunity is for your organization to think about, when are people talking about, oh, how do I buy a home, or how do I prepare for retirement? These decision-making journeys. I'm growing a family, give me financial tips, right? So those are those maybe top of funnel tips that can translate into your product solutions. And that's a big opportunity to look at there, okay? And last one here, and this is about, AI-generated content. So the velocity, as AI-generated content becomes easier to produce, what are the most important ways financial brands can demonstrate authenticity and real expertise, so that both users and AI systems trust the content, right? So this is an era of increased velocity of content, reduced trust. We spoke about that in the webinar. And so really this is about just having the top list, and we already spoke about it in the webinar. So publishing your original insights that are not generic, that are specific to your subject matter experts, and doing the work and finding those perspectives on your team and pulling it from the real world experience and stories at your institution and organization. So it provides, you can move at quick velocity to create a story, a marketing piece. And if you add an overlay of that, of an actual actual experience within your organization. It builds the authenticity, right? Having your credentialed experts be the voice of your content is a wonderful approach for authenticity. And then just making sure that you have references for every bit of data that you use. You back everything up that you use. And I think the final point, and this is just that EEAT, is keep everything accurate and up to date and compliant. Okay? Well, that's it. Thanks for sharing your lunch with Over It. We hope you enjoyed this, and we hope to see you back for another webinar. If you've got interest in an AI SEO audit for your organization, just use that QR code that was earlier in the video and book a meeting. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.